So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Understanding Child Development, an Overview of Developmental Milestones, Children Ages Birth to 5. And just to say that this is part one of a two-part series, and we'll give you the information for the upcoming webinar. Let me introduce myself. My name is Evelyn Blank, and I am the Director of the New York City Early Childhood Mental Health Training and Technical Assistance Center, also known as TTAC. And I'm very privileged today to be joined by Dr. Romina Barros, who I'm going to introduce in just a few minutes. Before we get started, I just wanted to share some logistics around today's webinar. We are recording the webinar, and the slides as well as the actual recording will be posted on the TTAC website. And as you can see on the screen, the link for that is there. Also, if you'd like to join our listserv and be notified of upcoming events, you can go to Contact Us on the website, click in and put in your email address. We will also be taking questions throughout the webinar and have time at the end set aside to answer questions. If we don't get to all the questions, we will try and respond to you after the webinar. So as such, we're asking everybody to please chat in your questions using the chat box functionality on your screen. And just to say that part two of this series will be held on March 27th at 1 o'clock. So just a brief word about who we are. And TTAC is the New York City Training and Technical Assistance Center, TTAC, which is funded through Thrive New York City, and it's a partnership with the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And it's a partnership between New York Center for Child Development and the McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research. And New York Center has been a major provider of early childhood mental health services, and we've done this through federal, state, city, and philanthropically funded programs. And we also have a very long history of providing system-level expertise to inform policy and support the field of early childhood mental health. And we do this both through training as well as direct practice. We're also really thrilled to be partnering with the McSilver Institute for Poverty Policy and Research at New York University. And they house the Community and Managed Care Technical Assistance Center, which really is the behavioral health technical assistance network for all of New York State. And they provide ongoing technical assistance and support with a focus on business sustainability. And this has been a wonderful partnership. TTAC is tasked with building the capacity and the competencies of mental health professionals and early childhood professionals across child serving systems. And what we really aim to do is to identify and address the social emotional needs of young children and their families across New York City. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I would like to encourage you all to go to our website to join our listserv and to ensure that you know about upcoming learning activities that are offered of no cost to participants. And would really welcome you to join our learning community here. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce right now Dr. Romina Barros, who's a developmental behavioral pediatrician. She is currently serves as the medical director of trauma services under 5 program, as well as the group attachment-based intervention, otherwise known as GABI program, which is housed at the Rose F. Kennedy Children's Evaluation and Rehabilitation Center, which is all part of Montefiore Medical Center. She currently maintains a faculty appointment as an assistant professor of pediatrics at Einstein College of Medicine. She is in charge of training of the child development specialists and participates in teaching the developmental behavioral pediatrics fellows and child adolescent psychiatry fellows. Dr. Barros was recently selected to be the CDC Act Early Ambassador to New York State, and it's in this capacity that she's presenting to us today. Dr. Barros is a board certified in pediatrics as well as in developmental behavioral pediatrics. Dr. Barros is a fellow member of the American Academy of Pediatrics and a member of the Society of Developmental Behavioral Pediatrics. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Barros.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the introduction, Evelyn. It is a real pleasure for me to be here today with all of you. To discuss one of my favorite subjects, which is child development. And I hope you enjoy the talk as much as I, really enjoy giving this talk and putting it together. So today what we're going to discuss, we're going to talk about developmental milestones. What are developmental milestones? We will go over the progress in typical development in all domains. in language, social, emotional, cognitive, and motor domains in children from 0 to 5. We will look at some videos that I think it's going to make the lecture even more fun. We're going to talk about what things that you can do to promote child development and to help the families that you serve, help your children learn and grow. We're going to also talk about how to recognize those children whose developmental milestones fall outside the expected range. We're going to talk about better understanding the red flags and so to help you identify those children who are at delay and that warrant referral for further evaluation. Next. Okay, so let's start with the definitions. What are developmental milestones? So developmental milestones are things that most children do by a certain age. Developmental milestones are how the child plays, how the child learns, speaks, acts, and moves. And they actually offer very important cues about the child's developmental health. Next. Infancy and childhood are very dynamic periods of change and growth. As you see, babies are constantly doing new things. If you observe the child in the newborn nursery, you're going to see that that child is all crumbled up in that blanket. And in a year from that day, that baby is going to be walking or maybe running. And there's a lot of things that happen during that first year in their development that makes that possible. And there's a lot of things that are happening. The good thing I would say about developmental milestones and neurodevelopment is that they proceed in a sequential and predictable pattern. What that means is that even though learning about developmental milestones and remember everything that the child does at a certain age can sometimes be, overwhelming and challenging. But we're going to learn today that are things that we can predict that are going to happen. Next. So if we think about development, we have to think that skills progress in a way that we can predict. So we know that the skills progress from the head to the toe. So if we look at that little baby that just was born, that baby, as the baby gets older, is going to first get control of the head, then control of the neck, then control of the trunk, and ultimately control of the legs. And that's how it goes in a sequential way. You're not going to see a baby that can stand up and has a head lag. And if you do see a baby that can stand up with a head lag, then we have to start thinking that something through that process is not going in the sequential way and typical way that it's supposed to be going. Another important key is that skills also progress from proximal to distal. What does that mean? That means that babies first get control of their shoulders, then they get control of their arms, and then they get control of their hands. So babies first start moving their arms. Some of those movements really don't have a purpose until that movement start having a little bit more purpose, until those hands started getting more accurate and more precision into certain movements. Also, skills progress from a generalized stimulus-based reflex to specific goal-oriented reactions that become increasingly precise, meaning that babies are born with reflexes, and these reflexes will disappear as they get older to allow more purposely reflexes to grow in to help the baby develop certain milestones. And we'll talk a little bit more about it, where we'll talk about, certain milestones that develop at certain time. We also want to think that normal variation of child development is much broader in motor development than in other areas of development. For example, if we take developmental milestones like walking, we know that most babies walk at the age of 12 months. But we have babies that walk a little bit earlier than that, and we have babies that walk later than that, and they're still in the normal pattern. There are other areas of development that is not so broader, and one of that areas is language, and we'll talk more about it. Next. So infants derives from the Latin word infants, that means unable to speak. So we usually consider infancy the period from birth to approximately 2 years of age. And this is because after 2, it's when language really starts to flourish. It's when we see that babies are starting, gaining more words, are talking. However, we have to think that even though language really, in terms of expressive language, flourish at the age of 2, there's a lot going on during those 2 first years of life in terms of language development. And this is a very exciting period. It's a very exciting period for the parents, but it's also an exciting period for us as clinicians and as child care providers, because it's exciting to share with the parents all the first mouth, the first grasp, the first, evidence of healthy separation anxiety, the first words, the first steps. Next. Okay, why it's so important for us to understand developmental milestones? Because developmental milestones offer important clues about a child's developmental health. Reaching out milestones at a typical age shows a child is developing as expected. Reaching milestones much earlier may mean that the child may be advanced in certain areas compared to his or her peers at the same age. But I think the most important thing is that when we have a child that is not reaching the milestones or is reaching them at a much later time than children the same age, it can help identify that the child may have a delay to be able to offer the families the services that they need to help that child grow. Next. Developmental skills are divided into developmental domains. So basically we have 4 developmental domains: social, emotional, language and communication, cognitive, and movement and physical development. What does social emotional domains mean? It's a domain about how children interact with each other and how they show emotions. Language and communication, this is domain about how children express their needs, talk, how they share their thinking, and how well they understand what is being said to them. With regards to cognitive, involves learning, thinking, problem solving. These domains is about how children learn new things and solve problems. It includes how children explore their environment to figure out things, where they're looking at world around them, putting objects in their mind, dropping, exploring. These domains, as the child gets older, also include the academic skills, like counting and learning letters and numbers. And movement and physical domain refers to how children use their bodies. It includes many milestones, and when we say movement and physical domain, we not only include the gross motor skills like walking and running, but also fine motor skills like grasping little things. Next. Okay, one thing to keep in mind: even though we divide development in different domains, that doesn't mean that certain milestones have to always fit in that domain. We know that, for example, language and social emotional, they share a lot of things that goes hand in hand together. So you can see a baby having more words as being a way of, increasing their communication skills. But if that baby is using that language to communicate needs and wants, it's also a way of socializing with other people. So some of the developmental milestones fit in more than one domain. For example, playing make-believe can be social and emotional, but as well as a cognitive milestone. Following instructions can also be language and communication, but as well, it falls into the cognitive milestones because it's important for a child to understand. And then, for example, playing peekaboo, it's considered cognitive, but as well as a social emotional milestone. And we'll talk a little bit more about peekaboo when we talk about separation anxiety and how that also, how that activity also fits in the part of the social emotional milestone. Next. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different milestones at different age periods. We're going to start with the 2-month-old. We're going to discuss a little bit what is expected at the different domains, and then what are the warning signs. We talk about, red flags. What are the skills that are supposed to be, that we're supposed to be seeing on a child at that age, and if they're not present, is a sign of concern. So what should we expect a 2-month-old to do? In terms of social emotional development, a 2-month-old usually began to smile at people, especially when they're talking to them, and try to look at the parents. In terms of language and communication, we start hearing the cooing, the making gargling sounds, and turning head to sounds. With regards to cognitive, they start paying attention to faces, and they begin to follow things with their eyes, especially faces. And with movement and physical, they can hold their head up, especially when they're lying on their belly. They start, pulling their head up a little bit, and they begin to push up when lying on the tummy. So what are the milestones that we should look into and should be concerned if they're not present at a 2 months? Doesn't respond to loud sounds, doesn't watch things as they move, meaning they're not following those faces, they're not following big objects as they move, doesn't smile at people, doesn't bring hands to mouth, and can hold head up when pushing up on tummy. So these are the areas in which, we need to look into and become concerned that the child may have a delay and might need a further assessment. Next. Okay, so we're going to watch a video of Valentina. Valentina is around 3 months old, and we're going to hear her cooing. Apart from her cooing, you're going to hear something that we call throaty sounds, which appears before cooing, which are sounds that are made through your throat. Ah. So as you can see, she's making sounds that comes through the throat. Those are called throaty sounds. Those are the first sounds that babies make, and then they go to the cooing sound. At this age, all that making sounds, they make sounds to themselves. They like making sounds, and they hear their sounds, and they make more sounds again, and they hear their sounds. If we have children that have been born with hearing loss, usually baby at this age do a lot of cooing and do a lot of throaty sounds, but because there's not that feedback reception of the hearing, as time goes by, these babies stop making the sounds because they're not hearing it themselves. Next. Okay, so how we can help our parents help their 2-month-old babies learn and grow? What activities that we can suggest for them to do with their babies to help the babies, foster their development? So we can recommend the parents to cuddle, to talk and play with their baby anytime during the day, what they're feeding, while they're dressing, while they're bathing. It's important that, we teach the parents that during the first 3 years of life are the most important 3 years in terms of brain development. There's a lot going on in the brain, and there's a lot of neurons. And the way that the neurons grow is through connections, and these connections happen from the day the baby is born. And the more we cuddle the baby, the more we talk to the baby, and the more we play with the baby, more connections the baby will create on the brain. And those connections are what is helping the baby develop. We should recommend for the parents to help the baby learn to soothe themselves. It's okay if the baby sucks their fingers. It's a way the baby are teaching themselves to soothe themselves. To always establish a routine, have a regular schedule as much as they can. Usually things are, a little bit chaotic when the baby is just a newborn and you bring the newborn home. But as the baby is getting older, it's easier to keep the baby into a schedule. And usually it really helps the baby to also learn how to regulate themselves when they are in that regular schedule. Always recommend the parents to act excited and smile a lot when their babies are making sounds, because this will stimulate more language. It's important to start working on the reciprocity of the language by imitating the baby's sounds and by talking back to the baby when the baby's talking. Encourage parents to talk, read, and sing to their babies. If they have a safe place where they can put a safe mirror for the baby to start looking at him or herself in the mirror while looking at books, to look at pictures, label pictures. It's also very important for the baby to spend a lot of time on the floor. Babies can start spending time on their tummy a couple of weeks after you bring them home, and it's important to encourage parents to do belly time. With the campaign of the back to sleep, putting your babies to sleep on their back to decrease the incidence of seeds. We're seeing that a lot of our babies have been showing delays on some of the motor skills, like turning over and rolling over from one side to the other. And so that's why it's so important that when the baby is alert and awake, and in a safe place, the baby spends a lot of time on their belly to strengthen that muscle. Next. Okay, we're going to go now over the developmental milestones of a 4-month-old. In terms of social emotional, they start smiling spontaneously. They start copying some movements like facial expressions. While the parents are looking, they're observing, and they're copying those facial expressions. They respond to affection. Language and communication, they begin to babble, which is not only cooing. Now it's more a little bit of combining consonant sounds. Cries in different ways that now the mom can understand when the baby's hungry, when there's pain, when they're being tired. In terms of cognitive, they can reach for toys. They follow moving things. They recognize faces. In terms of movement and physical, they bring the hand to their mouth, which is very important, bringing the hand to midline. They hold their head steady when we're pulling them to sit. They may begin to roll over to the tummy and to the back. They can hold toys. They can shake toys. And when lying to the stomach, if the parents have been practicing that tummy time, they're able now not only to hold the head up, but also to push the head up with their elbows. What are the warning signs? What are the red flags that we should be looking at this age? Is the baby doesn't watch things as they move, if they don't smile at people, if they can't hold their head steady, if there's no cooing or not making any sounds. Remember what we said previously, that if the baby is born with hearing loss, as times go by, because they cannot hear what they're saying, they will stop making sounds. If they don't bring things to their mouth, if they don't push down with legs when feet are placed on a hard surface, or if they have trouble moving one or both eyes in one direction. Next. Okay, we're going to watch a video of Valentina. She's 3 months old, so it's between 2 and 3 months old. What I want you to observe on this video is that, Valentina is being pushed up into the sitting position. I want you to observe how well she is able to hold her head. That means that she is developing that head control. If we start thinking about, what we talked at the beginning, how milestones goes into a sequential way, you see that Valentina does have a great head control, but what happens when she gets into sitting position? She can't sit there yet. So her head and her neck had developed perfectly. She's having great control of her head and her neck, but her back is still a little bit wobbling. She hasn't, yet developed control of her back, which is perfectly normal for a 3-month-old. Next. Okay, so how we can help the parents help their 4-month-old baby, encourage them to hold and talk to the baby. Continue with the steady routines. Copy the baby sounds. Continue with the reciprocity. Always have a quiet time, a time where, everybody can self-regulate, okay? Time where we can read or sing a song. A time where, where the baby is on the floor. We continue with a lot of tummy time and a lot of time on the floor. Put toys near so the baby can reach for them and can kick and can work, going towards grabbing the toys. Also, encourage the parents to help to hold the baby upright with the feet on the floor and maybe sing or talk for a couple of seconds, for a couple of minutes, and help the baby stand with support during that time. Next. What do we see in a 6-month-old? With terms of social emotional, they respond to other people's emotion and often seem happy. They know familiar faces. They like to look at themselves in the mirror. Language and communication, they began to say consonant sounds like jabbering with the M and the B. They respond to sounds by making sounds. They make sounds to show joy and displeasure. In terms of cognitive, they begin to pass things from one hand to the other, and they try to get things that are out of reach. If there's one milestone that you're going to remember for the 6-month-old, this is the one that I want you to remember, to transfer one object from one hand to the other. This is one of the most important milestones that baby develops at this age. What that basically means is that the right side of the brain is connecting with the left side of the brain, which is usually developed between the age of 4 and 6 months. And it means that the body knows that there are two parts and that we can work together. In terms of movement and physical, the child begins to sit without support, or to be rolling over in both directions, back to front, and when standing, they can support weight on their legs and they bounce. When should we get concerned? We should get concerned if the child doesn't try to get things that are in reach. They show no affection for caregivers. They don't respond to sounds around them. They have difficulty getting things to the mouth. They doesn't make vowel sounds. They don't roll over in either direction. They don't laugh or make any squealing sounds. They seem very stiff or very tight. Their muscles are very tight, or on the contrary, they seem very floppy and, like a rag doll. Next. So now we're going to watch a very short video about typical bouncing at this age, especially when, we try holding the babies on our lap. Okay. Okay, next. Okay. So how we can help the parents of a 6-month-old, what activities we can recommend for them, encourage them, continue playing on the floor, put your baby on the floor every day. The first 18 months of life are the oral motor stage, and it is known as oral motor because oral, they put everything in their mouth, and motor because motor skills are the areas that have the greatest changes during this time from 0 to 18. And this is the way the baby explores. This is how the baby explores the environment. And we know that exploration creates more connections into the baby's neurons, and that's what we want. So, making sure that the baby's in a safe environment, babies should be on the floor as much as they can. The parents, can help them sit with some support, put the babies on their tummies, put the babies on their back, encourage them to roll back and forth, with the use of toys, encourage them to learn the baby's moods. If the baby's happy, continue doing what they're doing. But if the baby's upset, make sure that they give the baby a break and they comfort them. Continue with the reciprocal conversation and also the reciprocal play. Encourage the parents to repeat the child sounds. And sometimes if the child sounds are starting meaning, having some meaning of a word, start labeling things for them. Continue reading books. And, the baby's going to start making sounds while they're reading the books. Praise them for any babbling and encourage that they're reading and they're making kind of, their own story of the book. Point to pictures, label pictures. Encourage parents to continue talking to their children while they're cooking, while they're changing at all times to increase that connection, to increase that vocabulary. Next. Okay, developmental milestones for a 9-month-old, what we should expect in terms of social emotional. They're clingy with familiar adults, and they may be afraid of strangers. What that means in terms of social emotional, between the period of 9 to 12 months, babies are starting developing a stranger anxiety. So this is a little bit what it's going on in here, and they're going to start soon developing something that is called object permanence, which it means that they start understanding that even if the object is not there, the object still exists. So they started understanding that if mom or dad, they're not in that room, they still exist and they want to be with them. They also have a favorite toy. In terms of language and communication, they continue copying sounds and gestures. They make a lot of different sounds like ma, 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 ba, ba, ba. They develop something that is very important in terms of communication, which is known as proto-imperative pointing, which is the pointing that they use to state what they need, that they cannot get, that is out of reach, and they start understanding the word no. In terms of cognitive, they start playing peekaboo. And if we look into social emotional, peekaboo, has a lot to do with the development of this, separation anxiety, this object permanence, because through the peekaboo, they understand that you are still behind, those hands. And even if you disappear, when you take those hands, you are appearing again. And it's a nice, play to do with children to help them with that separation anxiety. As we mentioned before, they developed the object permanence and they started looking for things that are hidden. With movements and physical, they pull to stand, they crawl, they pick up little things using what we call a radial digital grasp. What it means is using their whole hand to pick up things. With regard to skills that we have to look into that could be possible developmental delays are when they don't bear weight on their legs with support, when they don't sit with help, when they don't babble, when they don't play any games involving back and forth play, when they don't respond to their name, when they don't seem to recognize familiar people, don't look when somebody is pointing something to them, or when they don't transfer in an object from one hand to the other. Next. Okay, we're going to watch a video of scene. It's 9 months old, and this is a typical play of a 9-month-old. Okay, so we have seen, as you see, Finn is sitting very nicely without any extra support except, for his legs. He doesn't need his hands, to keep him steady. He has two objects, so he's using both hands. You see how he's transferring from one hand to the other, okay? And that's something that 9-month-olds do a lot. They give you the toy, but they take it back, and he is using his mouth to explore the environment. Okay, so what activities should we recommend the parents? To pay attention to the way the child is reacting to new situations, to continue with routines, to start playing games, my turn, your turn. Say what you think how your baby is feeling. It's also help them understand how they're feeling and label their feelings. Describe what the baby is looking at, talk, copy the baby's sounds, continue with that reciprocity. Utilize toys that can teach cause and effect, like, pushing cars or rolling balls back and forth, playing peekaboo and hide and seek to help with that healthy separation anxiety, and to continue reading. Next. 12 months old, in terms of social emotional, they repeat sounds or actions to get attention. They may start understanding about being shy, and they become nervous with a stranger. By the age of 12 months, most babies develop what we had been talking about with the separation anxiety. They know that mom is there, and they really don't want, mommy to leave. They start cooperating with dressing, and they bring toys and books or anything that is interest to them to share. In terms of language and communication, they say mama and dada. They can use simple gestures like shaking their head for no or waving bye-bye. They repeat sounds and words. Cognitive, they follow simple directions. They explore things by shaking, banging, throwing. They love to put things in a container and taking them out. They imitate activities, and they respond to their name. In terms of movement and physical, they may stand alone. They can push themselves to stand. Some babies may be cruising and giving some few steps without holding. They scribble on imitation, and they develop pincer grasp. Remember that before we were talking about obtaining objects from the floor by raking. Now we have a pincer grasp, which means that to pick up small objects, they use the thumb and the index. And we're going to see in the video next a little bit more about this. What things should concern us if they're not present, if the child cannot stand when supported, does not search for things that she see that you hide, doesn't say a single word like mom and dada, doesn't learn gestures like waving or shaking head, doesn't point to things or loses skills he once had. Next. So in this video, we're going to watch a video of Finn and Valentina. Finn is exactly 9 months. Valentina is 21 months. So what I want you to watch is in how they grasp the little things from the floor. They're having some snack, and what's the difference between one and the other picking up things. So you will see that, Valentina has a perfect pincer grasp because she is above, 12 months old, and how Finn used the whole hand to rake for things. Valentina does it with the thumb and the index finger, and Finn uses his whole hand to rake for things.
Is it good?
Okay, next. Okay, what activities we can tell the parents to help their 12 months old is to encourage them to give the child time to get to know a new caregiver. This is sometimes the times when sometimes mommies, daddies go back to work and they need to put the child in caregiver. Make sure that the child usually has a favorite toy, a stuffed animal to take with them. We're going to start working on behaviors. So encourage the parents to give a lot of praise for good behaviors and respond to the unwanted behaviors with a firm no. It's very important that there's consistency in when, the parents are saying no for certain things. Encourage them to talk to their child about what they're doing. For example, mom is washing their hands. Continue talking, continue reading, continue labeling to things, especially when the child is using sounds to approximate the words. This is a time that now, because the child has a nice grasp, to offer crayons and help them, understand how to, utilize the crayons and draw and copy and imitate. Let them play with the books, label things for them. Ask your child to label body parts while you're changing them, and always provide a lot of safe place for the toddler to explore. Next. Okay, so for an 18 months, what we're expecting in terms of social and emotional, they start playing simple pretend play. They'll explore with the parents nearby. They may cling to caregivers in new situations. They may become afraid of strangers, and they start developing temper tantrums. In terms of language and communication, they point to share things to others. This is known as proto-declarative pointing. Basically, it's the pointing in where they're sharing things with the parents. So we have proto-imperative in 12 months to ask for things, and proto-declarative pointing to share things, for example, on a book, and say several single words and start saying no. With cognitive, they know how ordinary things are used, like phone, brush. They follow one-step commands without gesture, and they point to body parts. In terms of movement and physical, most babies will be walking by now, running, eating with a spoon, drinking from a cup. They scribble spontaneously and can help get dressed. What are the warning signs? What should we look for at this age? If the child doesn't point to, show things to others, if they can walk, if he or she doesn't know the familiar things are for, doesn't copy others, doesn't gain new words, doesn't have at least 6 words, doesn't notice or mind when a caregiver leaves or returns or loses skills that once he or she had. Next. Okay, so we're going to watch a video of Valentina, language development at 18 months. Due to the time, we're not going to watch the whole video, but just the first part. So Valentina has a book. She's looking at pictures in the book. She's labeling. She's pointing.
What? What is it?
So in that picture,
ice cream. Yes. Ice cream. What's this? What they do you? Yes, it's cake. What's this? What is that? No, mine don't.
Okay. So as you can see, she, developed a couple of words. She's saying mine. She's pointing to things. She's labeling things. But one of the things that it really, calls your attention is that even on things that she doesn't know how to label, she uses gestures to communicate and said, let people know what it is. At one point, she was pointing at a cake, a birthday cake, and because she didn't remember how to say cake, she started singing happy birthday. And that's how, healthy language development evolved. They use their body and they use gesture to communicate. Next.
Yes, it's a cat.
So what activities that we can recommend to the parents to praise good behaviors and then, to punish bad behaviors? You can start using briefly timeouts at this age, use to describe words for feelings, use clear phrases, encourage pretend play, encourage empathy when other, children are sad, encourage to continue reading books, encourage hiding things and for them to look for it, play with blocks, balls, puzzles, books. Also always provide a safe, area for them to walk around and explore. a ball for kick and roll, encourage them to drink from a cup, to use a spoon, and even though it can be a messy task. Next. Okay, what we expect for a 2-year-old in terms of social emotional, they get excited when they are around other children. They usually are not doing cooperative play at this age. It's usually playing by side, what we call parallel play. Everybody plays with their own toys. They do enjoy chase games, and they started showing defiant behaviors. In terms of language and communication, I started using 2 to 4 word sentences. They point to pictures of common use. They name things of common use. They name names of familiar people and body parts. In terms of cognitive, they start playing simple make-believe. They can follow 2-step commands without gestures. They begin to sort shapes and colors, and they can build towers of 4 or more blocks. Movement and physical, they can kick a ball. They can throw a ball overhand. They start copying straight lines. They climb into furniture. They walk up and down the stairs holding on. What are the areas that we have to, be in the lookout for possible signs of developmental delay? If the child doesn't use a 2-word phrase, doesn't know what to do with common things like a brush, a phone, a fork, a spoon, doesn't copy actions or words, doesn't follow simple instructions, doesn't walk steadily, or loses the skills she or he once had. So we're going to watch a video of Valentina copying a straight line. Actually, Valentina is a little bit younger than a 2-year-old. And, we're asking her to do, to copy a straight line for this video. And you'll see what happens. And we'll talk a little bit about once that happens. This video is very rich, not only because of copying the straight line, and we'll talk a little bit more.
Straight line. Why don't you try it, Valentina? Straight line, left. And you happy? Straight line. Okay, do a happy face.
Okay, so we can see at this video is that the sister was trying for, Valentina to copy a straight line. And she wanted to scribble and make circles. But towards the end, not only she did copy the straight line, she also imitated, the same way as she was, as the sister was instructing her to copy the straight line, which is typical development of it, 18 to 24 months old, to copy and imitate. So what are activities that we can encourage our 12-month-old? Our parents of our 12-month-old is encourage the child to help with simple chores in the house, like sweeping and, making dinner. Praise, for being good helpers. Usually 2 years old love to do that. Encourage them to praise their children when they follow instructions and when they listen, and when they are listening, and limit attention for the defiant behaviors. Encourage to teach the child to identify and say the body parts, animals, and common things. Encourage the parents not to correct the child when they say words incorrectly, rather repeat it the correct way. Encourage the parents to encourage their child to say words instead of pointing, and labeling when they're pointing something that they don't know how to say. Help them with puzzles that have shapes, colors, and farm animals. Name all of them. Encourage the parents to encourage the child to play with blocks, taking turns, and to work also into our projects. Next. Okay, 3 years old, what we expect for a 3-year-old in terms of social and emotional, take turns in games, show concern for crying parents, show affection, separate easily from mom and dad, shows a wide range of emotions, stress and undressed self. In terms of language, they talk well enough for a stranger to understand most of the time. They understand prepositions. They understand the concept of mine, his, hers. They're able to say their first name, age, and sex. They can name the friends, and they can carry a conversation using a full sentence. They're still making a lot of grammatical errors, which is fine for the age. In terms of cognitive, they can do puzzles of 3 to 4 pieces. They understand the meaning of one. They can copy circle. They build a tower of 6 or more, and they screw and screw jars. In terms of movement and physical, they can run easily, they climb well, they can pedal a tricycle, they can walk down and up the stairs, now alternating feet and without holding on, and they can turn book pages one at a time. What are the warning signs that we should be looking at this age? If the child falls down a lot, has trouble navigating stairs, drools, or has very unclear speech, can work simple toys, doesn't speak in sentence, doesn't understand simple instructions, doesn't play pretend or make believe, doesn't want to play with other children or with toys, doesn't make eye contact, and loses skills that he or she had once. Next. Okay, at this age, the age of 3, they will start doing drawings of a 3-part people, and this is a video of Valentina drawing a 3-part person. And what do we consider a 3-part person? Okay, so you'll see that she makes the head, which is the head is also the body. That's one part. Then the body are the cheeks, and the arms are considered another part. Nice. And then the stick that is the body, another part, and then the eyes, are extras. But those are the typical 3 body parts. Next. Okay, this is how drawings at that age look like. Next. What can encourage the parents to do of a 3-year-old? Work with the child to solve problems when he is upset. Encourage to talk about their child's emotion. Encourage to set rules and limits and stick to them. Be very consistent, since we start with behavior management at the age of 12 months. Give your child to encourage them to give the child instructions for 2 or 3 steps. Continue reading, continue doing plenty of activities with crayon and coloring, matching games, counting games, and, playing outside. Next. What do we expect for a 4-year-old in terms of social emotional? They that pretend play. Now they're pretending to, be mom and dad. They're more creative on the make-believe play, and their scenes are longer. They love to play with other children. They start with cooperative play. They often can tell what is real and what is not real. They are going to become afraid of the monster, of the dark. In terms of language communication, they know basic rules of grammar. They sing songs and say poems from memory. They tell stories by reading, by looking at the pictures on the book. They make stories. They can say their first and last name. In terms of cognitive, they can name colors and numbers, then understand the idea of counting. They begin to copy letters. They start to understand time. They understand same versus different. They can draw a person with 2 to 4 body parts. They play board games. They tell what he thinks is going to happen next on the book, especially if they have read the book several times. And in terms of movement and physical, they hop. They stand on 1 foot for 2 seconds. They can use scissors, and they can pour and mash their own food. What are the areas that we should look for? Possible developmental delays if he or she can jump in a place, has trouble scribbling, shows no interest in interactive games or make-believe, ignores other children or doesn't respond to people outside the family, resists dressing, sleeping, and using toilet, can retell a favorite story, doesn't follow 3-part commands, doesn't understand same and different, doesn't use me, you correctly, speaks unclearly, or loses a skill he once had. Next. Okay, we're going to watch a video of Valentina. She's 4 years old. She's going to give us a little bit of intro about a book that she likes to read. And you can see as she's looking at the book, she is pretending to read the book.
You want to tell me what the book is about? Yeah. Okay.
Oh no, it's raining outside. Take a look. You want cupcake? What color? Pink.
Okay, so next, so she's looking at the book and she is remembering, what the story is about and, using the pictures to talk about the story, to retell the story. Next.
Who said go to rest? So did Dad tell Pinkalicious to go to bed?
Okay, so what recommendation we can give to the parents? Encourage the parents to play make-believe with their children, give the children toys to build imagination, dress up clothes, kitchen set, blocks. Encourage the parents to give the child simple choices whenever they can. For example, what to wear, what to play, and what to eat for snacks. To limit the choices to 2 to 3. Encourage the parents that during play dates, let the child solve their own problems with their friends, but be nearby to help if needed. To encourage their child to use words, share toys, and take turns. Use words like first, second, and finally to understand sequence of events. Encourage them to take time to answer their child's why questions. Encourage to continue reading, to look at pictures, point to pictures, say the colors of the pictures, and also continue spending a lot of time outside exploring. Next. So last one, the developmental milestones of a 5-year-old, what we're expecting in terms of social emotional. Usually they want to please their parents and friends. They want to be liked by their friends. They start following and understanding game rules. They're aware of their gender. They can tell what's real and what's make-believe, and they show a little bit more independence. In terms of language and communication, they speak very clearly. They tell a story, a simple story using full sentences. They understand future tense. They say full name and address. In terms of cognitive, they can count to 10 or more things. They can print some of the letters and numbers. They copy a triangle. They can draw a person with at least 6 body parts. So there's more details to the person. In terms of movement and physical, they begin to skip. They can stand on 1 foot for 10 seconds or longer. They can use a fork or spoon, and they can swing and climb. Warning signs at this age, they doesn't show a wide range of emotions. If the child shows extreme behaviors, usually withdrawn, is easily distracted, has problem focusing on one activity for more than 5 minutes, doesn't respond to people, can tell what's really and what's make-believe, doesn't play a variety of games and activities, can give first or last name, doesn't use plurals, doesn't talk about daily activities of experience, doesn't draw pictures, and loses the skills that he once had. Next. So this is just a drawing. So you see that now the people had bodies, and there's more details into it. Next. What we can tell the parents to help the 5-year-old grow and learn is to encourage to continue, with the play dates, to trip to the park or play groups. This is a good time also to talk to your child about safety, to teach their children the address and phone numbers. When reading to your child, tell them to predict what you think is going to happen next into the story. encourage the child to read by looking at the pictures and telling the story and making up stories, teach the child concepts of the morning, afternoon, evening, today, tomorrow, continue offering crayons and papers and paint and safety scissors to do projects, to continue taking them outside for walks, and to, continue them playing with toys and putting things together. Next. Okay, thank you. I know we had run a little bit out of time, and I know if there's any questions.
Yes, there are a few questions. This is Evelyn Blank, and I wanted to let you know that we will be posting the PowerPoint. That's something that a lot of people asked. It will be on the TTACny.org website. Go to events. It'll be under past events in a few days. So I know that this is a lot of material, and you will be able to access it. So maybe we have time for one or two questions. I know some of them were chatted in.
Okay, so one of the first questions was, where will you put executive function skills in? And Shannon Crane, executive functions go in cognitive development, mostly in cognitive development, but as we said before, sometimes there's a mixture of certain skills that you need for your executive function. So there's a lot of social emotional going on that are part as well of the executive function, like regulating yourself, being able to stay on task. That's also part of the executive function. So I will say, like you put in the question, it is a mixture of both, but executive function is mostly seen as a cognitive development. But you definitely need, a strong social emotional development.
Maybe one more question, and we will try to get back to people if you posted questions that we couldn't get to. So maybe one last question here.
So there was one of the questions here, why the lecture jump from stages or developmental milestones, just 15 months, 21 months. Usually those are the areas where we see the most of the changes between 18 months and the next step is 24 months. It's also where the American Academy of Pediatric Guidelines for Pediatricians is recommending for us to do monitoring and developmental screening. So yes, there's a lot going on through the areas of 15 months and 21 months. But, it will be also a lot to be on the lecture if we go through every single, area of development.
Well, thank you so much. This has been an incredibly rich webinar, very much appreciated. Stay tuned for part 2, which will be on March 27th from 1 to 2 p.m. And again, the PowerPoint and the whole recording of the webinar will be posted on ttacny.org under events, past events. So thank you all, and I hope you'll join us for the upcoming webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.